Chapter 7. Maggie has a haircut. Go and speak to your aunts and uncles, my dear, said Mrs. Tulliver, looking anxious and melancholy. She wanted to whisper to Maggie a command to go and have her hair brushed. Well, and how do you do? And I hope you are good children. Are you? Said Aunt Glegg, in the same loud, emphatic way, as she took their hands, hurting them with her large rings, and kissing their cheeks much against their desire. Look up, Tom. Look up. Boys who go to boarding schools should hold their heads up. Look at me now. Tom declined that pleasure, apparently, for he tried to draw his hands away. Put your hair behind your ears, Maggie, and keep your frock on your shoulder. Aunt Glegg always spoke to them in this loud, emphatic way, as if she considered them deaf or perhaps rather idiotic. It was a means, she thought, of making them feel that they were accountable creatures and might be a check on naughty tendencies. Bessie's children are so spoiled. Well, my dears, said Aunt Pullet, in a compassionate voice, you grow wonderfully fast. I doubt they'll outgrow their strength, she added, looking over their heads with a melancholy expression at their mother. I think the girl has too much hair. I'd have it thinned and cut shorter, sister, if I was you. It isn't good for her health. It's that it makes her skin so brown. I shouldn't wonder. Don't you think so, Sister Dean? I can't say I'm sure, sister, said Mrs. Dean, shutting her lips close again, and looking at Maggie with a critical eye. No, no, said Mr. Tulliver. The child's healthy enough. There's nothing that ails her. There's red wheat as well as white, for that matter, and some like the dark grain best. But it would be as well if Bessie has the child's hair cut, so as it lies smooth. A dreadful resolve was gathering in Maggie's breast. Maggie, said Miss Tulliver, beckoning Maggie to her and whispering in her ear, go and get your hair brushed. Do, for shame. I told you not to come in without going to Martha first. You know I did. Tom, come out with me, whispered Maggie, pulling his sleeve as she passed him, and Tom followed willingly enough. Come upstairs with me, Tom, she whispered, when they were outside the door. There's something I want to do before dinner. There's no time to play at anything before dinner, said Tom. Oh yes, there's time for this. Do come, Tom. Tom followed Maggie upstairs into her mother's room, and saw her go at once to a drawer from which she took out a large pair of scissors. What are they for, Maggie? Said Tom, feeling his curiosity awakened. Maggie answered by seizing her front locks and cutting them straight across the middle of her forehead. Oh, my buttons, Maggie, you'll catch it, exclaimed Tom. You'd better not cut any more off. Snip went the great scissors again while Tom was speaking, and he couldn't help feeling it was rather good fun. Maggie would look so queer. Here, Tom, cut it behind for me, said Maggie, excited by her own daring and anxious to finish the deed. You'll catch it, you know, said Tom, hesitating a little as he took the scissors. Never mind, make haste, said Maggie, giving a little stamp with her foot. Her cheeks were quite flushed. The black locks were so thick, nothing could be more tempting to a lad who had already tasted the forbidden pleasure of cutting the pony's mane. One delicious grinding snip, and then another, and the locks fell heavily on the floor, and Maggie stood cropped in a jagged, uneven manner, but with a sense of clearness and freedom, as if she had emerged from a wood into the open plain. Oh, Maggie, said Tom, jumping round her and slapping his knees as he laughed. Oh, my buttons, what a queer thing you look. Look at yourself in the glass. Maggie felt an unexpected pang. She had thought beforehand chiefly of her own deliverance from her teasing hair and teasing remarks about it, and something also of the triumph she should have over her mother and her aunts, by this very decided course of action. But now when Tom began to laugh at her and say she looked like an idiot, the affair had quite a new aspect. She looked in the glass, and still Tom laughed and clapped his hands, and Maggie's flushed cheeks began to pale, and her lips to tremble a little. "Don't laugh at me, Tom," said Maggie, in a passionate tone, with an outburst of angry tears, stamping and giving him a push. "Now then, Spitfire," said Tom. "What did you cut if off for then? I shall go down. I can smell the dinner going in." He hurried downstairs and left poor Maggie to that bitter sense of the irrevocable. She could see clearly enough now the thing was done, that it was very foolish, and that she should have to hear and think more about her hair than ever. For Maggie rushed to her deeds with passionate impulse, and then saw not only their consequences, but what would have happened if they had not been done. Tom never did the same sort of foolish things as Maggie, having a wonderful instinctive discernment of what would turn to his advantage or disadvantage. Maggie, as she stood crying before the glass, felt it impossible that she should go down to dinner and endure the severe words of her aunts, while Tom and Cousin Lucy and Kezia, who waited at the table, and perhaps her father and her uncles, would laugh at her, for if Tom had laughed at her, of course everyone else